You are standing on the bank of the Nile. It is 3,300 years ago. The sun is going down. The air smells like water and mud and something sweet and rotting. You are the most powerful man on earth. You rule an empire. You have armies, palaces, gods with your face on them. And something the size of a sesame seed is about to kill you. Scientists confirmed it in 2010 when they ran DNA analysis on the mummified remains of Tutankhamun, king of Egypt. Inside his blood, preserved in tissue after 3,300 years, they found the parasite Plasmodium falciparum, the most lethal strain of malaria that exists. The most powerful man in the ancient world died of a mosquito bite. And here is what nobody tells you about that. He was not special. He was one of billions. Right now, in 2026, malaria still kills over 600,000 people every year. The majority of them are children under the age of 5, with all of modern medicine, with vaccines, insecticides, treated nets, international aid programs worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Still, 600,000 every year. Now try to picture what this disease was doing to the human race for the 300,000 years before any of that existed. Some researchers have estimated malaria may be responsible for more human deaths than any other single cause in history. The exact figure is genuinely impossible to know. But what is not in dispute is this. The oldest confirmed evidence of malaria parasites comes from mosquitoes preserved in amber in the Dominican Republic. They are 30 million years old. Malaria was not waiting for us. We walked into it, and it got into us before we even left Africa. The DNA of Plasmodium falciparum shows the same pattern of genetic diversity as the people it infects, with the highest diversity in Africa and less everywhere else. That is the signature of a parasite that spread with its host. When the first groups of Homo sapiens began migrating out of Africa 60,000 to 70,000 years ago, malaria came with them, packed invisibly into the blood of every person who made the journey. Every camp they set up near water. Every child born near a swamp. Every generation that followed. For 300,000 years, from the first fully modern humans in East Africa all the way to last century, there was no treatment, no quinine, no nets, no chloroquine, nothing. A child running a fever in 50,000 BC had the same odds against malaria as a child running a fever in 50,000 BC, which is to say, not good. The human body, however, is not passive. In the 1950s, a British scientist named Tony Allison was working in East Africa when he noticed something. People in regions where malaria was endemic had unusually high rates of a genetic condition called sickle cell trait. The two things mapped onto each other almost perfectly. High malaria, high sickle cell. Low malaria, low sickle cell. Sickle cell disease occurs when a person inherits a mutated gene from both parents. The red blood cells collapse into rigid crescent shapes. It causes severe pain, organ damage, shortened life. By every standard measure, it is a dangerous genetic condition. Natural selection should have eliminated it from the population thousands of years ago. It did not. And Allison figured out why. If you inherit only one copy of the mutation from one parent, your red blood cells behave slightly differently. Not enough to cause disease, but enough that when Plasmodium falciparum tries to invade them, it cannot gain a proper foothold. The parasite is less able to replicate. You are not immune, but you are significantly less likely to die from severe malaria. You survive. You have children. You pass the trait on. For hundreds of thousands of years, in regions where malaria was killing people constantly, the sickle cell mutation was quietly being selected for. Not because it was good, because it was less bad than the alternative. In populations across sub-Saharan Africa, sickle cell trait frequency today reaches 15 to 25% in many regions. That is not random. That is the fingerprint of 300,000 years of malaria pressing on the human genome with the weight of an extinction event. And sickle cell is not the only mark malaria left on us. Researchers have identified at least a dozen distinct genetic adaptations in human populations that exist specifically because of malaria. G6PD deficiency, hemoglobin C, hemoglobin E, thalassemia, ovulocytosis, each one a different mutation, in different populations, on different continents, all converging on the same function, making it harder for the parasite to kill you. Evolution found the same solution over and over again through completely different molecular pathways. Because the pressure was that if you have any ancestry from a malaria endemic region, and that includes most of Africa, large parts of Southeast Asia, the Mediterranean, the Middle East and South Asia, then some fraction of the genetic instructions running your body right now were shaped by this parasite. Not metaphorically, literally. There are sequences in your DNA that exist because some ancestor of yours survived a mosquito bite that their neighbor did not. Malaria did not just kill people. It edited us. Now here is the part that makes the whole picture even stranger. For most of human history, malaria was not a tropical disease. It was everywhere. Hippocrates described undulating fevers in ancient Greece in the 5th century BC. Julius Caesar contracted it. Shakespeare wrote about it. Oliver Cromwell died of it in Ireland in 1658. Abraham Lincoln had malaria in Illinois. Until the early 20th century, malaria was endemic across much of Europe and the United States. The reason it was eradicated in temperate regions was not a vaccine. It was insecticide, swamp drainage, window screens, and economic development. Technologies that only became available within the last 100 years. Before that, the disease was simply part of life at every latitude, warm enough for mosquitoes, which is most of the planet for most of the year. In Rome during the 1st and 2nd centuries, researchers from McMaster University analyzed skeletal remains from multiple sites across the Italian peninsula. Inside the dental pulp of individuals dead for 2,000 years, they recovered fragments of Plasmodium falciparum DNA, confirmed malaria, right at the height of Roman civilization. Some historians now believe chronic malaria may have been one of several factors that gradually degraded the productivity and military capacity of the Roman Empire over centuries. A disease so pervasive, it was just background noise. Just the way summer felt. And still today, in 2026, despite everything, a child dies of it roughly every 90 seconds. Most people never think about malaria at all. It is a disease associated with somewhere else, something managed, something that happens to other people. But the distance between you and it is almost entirely a function of where your ancestors happened to end up after those first migrations out of Africa. If they went north, into cold winters and fewer mosquitoes, the disease eventually receded. If they stayed near the equator, it did not. You did not choose your latitude, neither did they. And here is the thing. The genetic mark malaria left on humanity is permanent. The sickle cell mutations are in billions of people alive right now. The thalassemias, the G6PD variants. These are not historical artifacts. They are active sequences in living DNA, in living children, coding for proteins every day, because 300,000 years ago, a parasite found us near the water and decided we were useful. A creature that has no brain, no eyes, no nervous system, an organism so simple it cannot survive outside a cell, and for the entire length of our existence as a species, it has been the most patient, most persistent, most consequential opponent we have ever faced. Not a predator, not a rival species, not a drought or a glacier or a supervolcano, something invisible, something that rode inside us since before we had language to name it. The next time you feel a mosquito land on your arm and you swat it away without thinking about it, consider what just happened. You just did something your ancestors have been doing for 300,000 years. The difference is that for most of that time, they were not always fast enough.